strikes every 30 to 45 seconds. It isn't a lion, a polar bear, or any creature you'd fear in the wild. It's smaller than a penny, weighs less than a raindrop, and is responsible for nearly 10 million human deaths in just the last decade alone. Mosquitoes have been winning the survival game for over 125 million years, evolving long before humanity and surviving every extinction event the planet has thrown at them. But imagine, just for a moment, they simply vanished. A world without the buzz, without the itch, and without the death toll. But would a mosquito-free Earth actually be a paradise? Or have we just pulled a thread that unravels the entire ecosystem? The evolutionary story of mosquitoes, or the family Culicidae, goes back about 100 million years to the Cretaceous period. As members of the order Diptera, or true flies, the Culicidae family branched out, leading to two main subfamilies. These tribes include the well-known Aedes genus, which can carry viruses like dengue, Zika, and yellow fever. It is interesting to note that mosquitoes weren't always blood feeders. Their ancestors actually lived on plant nectar and floral juices. Over time, the ability to feed on blood, known as hematophagy, evolved as an adaptive strategy to provide the extra protein needed for egg development. It's fascinating how mosquitoes actually go about finding their hosts. Most species are crepuscular, meaning they prefer to be active during the dawn and dusk hours, though some, like the Asian tiger mosquito, are happy to feed during the day. Their antennae are incredibly specialized for this, with dozens of odor receptors specifically designed to sniff out chemicals in human perspiration. And when searching for a host, they often use a two-phase process. Fly around until they detect an odor, and then homing in on the source. They tend to be more attracted to certain individuals, such as those with type O blood, high body heat, or people who are pregnant. The most important cue for them is body odor, which is created by bacteria on our skin breaking down sweats and oils. Once a mosquito lands on its host, it doesn't just dive in. It first uses its labium, which is a protective sheath, to probe the skin and find the right spot to begin. Inside that sheath are needle-like structures called stylets. As a mosquito prepares to feed, the labium retracts, allowing these stylets to pierce the skin, effectively searching for a blood vessel. Once it successfully locates one, it injects its saliva into the wound. This saliva is key. It contains specific compounds that act as an anticoagulant, preventing the blood from clotting and allowing it to flow smoothly into the mosquito's feeding tube. Once that mosquito has consumed enough blood to gain the necessary protein, it simply withdraws its mouth parts and flies away. However, the sting itself isn't the primary danger. It's what the mosquito is carrying. When it feeds on an infected host, it ingests not just the blood, but also the microscopic pathogens. These pathogens then face a biological journey of their own, moving through the mosquito's system until they reach its salivary glands. So, when the mosquito moves to its next target and injects that anticoagulant saliva, it's also delivering an unintended passenger. It is wild to think about how much these tiny insects have actually changed our history. For example, a lot of historians think malaria played a huge part in the decline of the Roman Empire. The disease was everywhere in the marshes around Rome, and it just wore down the health and the military strength of the people living there, year after year. We saw that same dynamic later on with the Panama Canal. Early attempts to build it completely stalled out just because so many workers were dying from yellow fever and malaria. And it wasn't until people figured out that the mosquitoes were the ones spreading the sickness. Even today, this is still a huge issue. We've seen massive recurring outbreaks of dengue fever across Southeast Asia and parts of the Americas, which completely overwhelmed local hospitals. So, what if they're completely wiped off the planet? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's tempting to imagine a world where we never have to reach for bug spray again. But it's actually a really complicated scenario. There are over 3,000 species of mosquitoes, and while we notice mostly the few that bite us, they actually play a pretty big part in nature. Their larvae, for one, live in water and serve as a main food source for all sorts of fish, frogs, and other aquatic insects. And once you pull that rug from under them, it could trigger a ripple effect where those populations start to drop, which then affects the birds, bats that rely on those fish or insects for food. In places like the Arctic, it could be even more intense. During the short summer, mosquito swarms are so dense that they're a huge part of the diet for migratory birds. Some researchers have estimated that bird populations in those areas could take a massive hit, possibly dropping up to 50% if that food source were to suddenly disappear. They'd have to scramble to find something else to eat, and it's not guaranteed that they would adapt in time. We usually think of bees or butterflies, but mosquitoes are actually regular pollinators too. Both males and females live off flower nectar. And while they aren't the primary pollinators for most crops, they are still vital for some specific plants. So if they were to vanish, those plants might struggle to reproduce, which then ends up rippling out to insects or small animals that rely on them. On the other hand, a lot of scientists think the world wouldn't actually collapse. Most predators that eat mosquitoes aren't only eating mosquitoes. They'd likely shift their diet to other insects. And because some mosquito species are pollinators, we might see a temporary dip in the health of certain plants. But nature is pretty good at filling those kinds of empty spots. So the biggest takeaway is that while it would be an absolute game changer for human health, saving millions of lives from malaria, dengue, and Zika, it would still be a massive ecological experiment. That's because we would be removing a piece of the puzzle that's been around for millions of years and just hoping that the rest of the picture holds itself together. We've talked about the massive impact mosquitoes have on us and what the ripple effect would look like if they suddenly vanished. But the real question is, how do we actually pull the trigger? If we really wanted to get rid of them, could we even do it? Honestly, wiping them all out is almost certainly impossible. We're talking about over 3,000 different species spread across every continent. They're incredibly resilient, they reproduce at lightning speed, and they adapt to just about any environment we throw at them. So instead of a total wipeout plan, scientists are focusing on surgical species-specific tactics. First, there's the sterile insect technique. Scientists breed massive numbers of male mosquitoes in a lab and sterilize them. Since the males don't bite, they're harmless to us, and when they mate with wild females, the eggs just never hatch. So if you do this on a big enough scale, the population in that area simply crashes. Then there's a Wolbachia approach. Scientists infect mosquitoes with a specific bacteria called Wolbachia. It doesn't necessarily kill the insect, but it does stop them from being able to carry viruses like dengue or Zika, and it actually makes it harder for them to reproduce successfully. And there's also the sci-fi solution, gene drives. Using tools like CRISPR, scientists can tweak a mosquito's DNA, so it passes on an infertility trait to all of its offsprings. In a lab, this can wipe out an entire population in just a few generations. But letting that loose in the wild, that's a massive ethical hurdle we're still trying to figure out. So why haven't we done this on a global scale? That's because it's a logistical nightmare. Even if you cleared an entire country, mosquitoes don't exactly respect borders. They just fly right back in. It's also crazy expensive and requires constant long-term maintenance. So it's a weird spot to be in. We've built our whole society around trying to keep these things away from us. But at the same time, we're stuck in this complicated dance with an insect that's been here for millions of years. Maybe the real lesson here isn't about winning or losing a war against a bug. It's about realizing that nature doesn't really care about our borders or our plans. We're not going to delete them, and they aren't going to stop being a part of our lives. We just have to be smarter about how we handle the pressure. So, would you prefer a mosquito-free world? Thank you so much for watching. Everything in this video was 100% human-made and AI-free. If you want to support what we do, please support us by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Also, what animal's disappearance are you curious about next? Let us know in the comments below.